What's up, everybody? This is Whiskey in the Six. I'm Rob, here with authors Davin and Blair of the Definitive Guide to Canadian Distilleries. Gentlemen, why don't you say hello?
Hey, Rob, how's it going? It's Blair here.
Hi, Blair. Hi, Rob. It's Davin.
Everybody's got a copy. Thank you very much for sending me this copy of the book. I've had an opportunity to already go through it, and now that we're on isolation and not much else to do other than take care of the kids, do my day job, and then have pretty free evenings, can't go to the gym anymore. I went through this pretty quickly. I found it very, very interesting. What surprised me, I think, the most was the amount of distilleries that have spread across Canada. For like the longest time, I could only think, I don't know, Davin, you started your website, like you said, in 2010. I think, if I'm not mistaken, in that time, it's probably multiplied by 10, if not more. Has it not?
It's multiplied by at least 20.
Okay, there you go. So
maybe more than that.
Yeah. So very interesting times we're living in, where the setup, I guess, it's becoming more of a community where people are sharing the information so that other people can start distilleries of their own, it seems like.
Yeah, it's a real community, yeah.
Yeah. So how did you guys get this started? How did you meet? Because you're both writers and you both write for various apps and websites, and Davin, you've written a book as well. So how did you guys connect and get into this?
I was writing for a show in the States called Drinking Made Easy, and I bought Davin's book, didn't know him at the time, and I reviewed it. We interviewed each other and all that kind of stuff, and from that, it kind of snowballed. Like, I started doing some side gigs for a whiskey magazine that Davin couldn't do at the time, and we started up a series for Whiskey magazine, and just built on that from there. And this book is kind of a natural progression from those adventure series in Whiskey magazine.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun, and we just seemed to click.
Oh yeah, no, the first province we went to for this book was Newfoundland, and at the time the Newfoundland distillery wasn't there yet, but we were there to visit a place called Rodriguez Distillery that made this iceberg vodka. Unfortunately, it doesn't exist anymore as far as we know. But that was in 2014, right, Davin? In July?
July 2014. We were there on Canada Day.
Yeah, it was cold, and we hit up this place, and it snowballed from there. That was the big catalyst to get this book rolling.
Yeah, it was fun. You know, we wrote that adventure up for Whiskey magazine. It was published in Whiskey magazine, and a woman from the Newfoundland Tourism Board or whatever wrote me an email. She said, "No one's ever going to want to visit Newfoundland after reading your story about how cold it was there." But we were wearing gloves and mitts on Canada Day. You know, I've been in Newfoundland many times. We loved it anyway. It just went downhill from there.
Yeah,
I think Blair took me straight from there over to the Outlaws Motorcycle Club.
Yeah,
that Blair.
yeah. We went into this bar, and we just looked like we do now, just like regular guys, non-threatening. And we asked the bartender, was kind of acting kind of weird, and she goes, "Are you guys outlaws?" And we're going like, "What the hell's wrong with you?" Like,
What kind of question is that?
Yeah. So across the street is this Outlaws Motorcycle Club. And just like about 10 minutes earlier, we were outside of it taking pictures of this Outlaw Motorcycle Club, and this woman was all strange. And then I think Davin had to use the washroom or something, and she's like, I better only hear washroom noises in there. It was very, very, very weird.
Yeah, that sounds pretty weird. That's funny, though.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So it just went downhill from there.
Downhill, that's basically it,
yeah.
So traveling across Canada, traveling to all the different distilleries, right now, if you had to say a province that's producing, we won't get into like distillery specifics, but a province that's producing the best potential whiskey, let's say, because a lot of these are brand new distilleries. A lot of them are not quite at the whiskey level yet. What would your province be that, like, let's call it the highest prospect province?
Start
Boy,
flipping a coin, right?
there are quite a few.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I'll answer that now, and then Blair will give you a different answer. Then ask us again in 5 minutes, and we'll each give different answers again. Because I mean, Saskatchewan, the Yukon, British Columbia, Ontario, Alberta, all have fabulous whiskey.
And I guess they would all be very, very different, right? Because of the climate differences from province to province too, right?
Well, I think they're different because of different distillers.
Yeah.
Different distillers take different approaches. They really do.
So, like, if you were comparing, let's say, BC to Ontario, they have Shelter Point out in BC. What would you say, like, the biggest difference is with their focus in BC? Do you think BC, like the coastal provinces, are looking more into the single malt style whiskeys, whereas the internal provinces are looking more at like the Canadian whiskey style, like the old school corns and rye whiskeys? Does that make sense? What I'm trying to say, or like, for example, Glen Breton. Yeah, either of you jump in. I'm just wondering.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. If you look at a place like Black Fox Farms in Saskatchewan, they're making a Triticale whiskey, which is amazing, and they plan on blending that with some other stocks. They're still quite young, so they're not really sure what they're going to do for their first release yet. But at the same time, you look at Shelter Point, their single malts are fantastic. Everything they do is fantastic.
Yep.
And Davin might be able to answer this better than me, but it's kind of interesting how single malts have caught on the West Coast, and the East Coast for that fact, and the interior. It's probably a lot to do with what kind of grain they can get,
Okay.
and just what people drink in the region.
Interesting. See, I always wondered if it had anything to do with because I remember a long time ago, Ralphie came to Canada, and he went out to Glen Breton, Glenora. I think Glenora is the distillery, right?
Yeah,
No. I was with him, and we went to Victoria Distillers and a couple of others out in British Columbia.
Okay.
Yeah. If he's been to Glen Breton, it's been since then, but I don't think he came back after that first trip.
Okay, maybe, I don't know. I remember him talking about Glenora and saying that the climate is very similar to that of Scotland at the time when he was talking about it. And
yeah, okay, that would confirm that he hasn't been there.
Yeah, yeah, probably. I guess because I haven't been either, so I couldn't speak to either.
But it's cold as hell.
Yeah,
in the winter. And they don't have heated warehouse either.
Yeah, and that actually makes sense that you say that, because I do find that their whiskeys tend to take a little bit longer to age, in my opinion. Like from like comparing it to a Scotch, like, and that there's so many variables, of course, but I mean we're veering off a little bit here, but.
Rob, I think that Glen Breton is very slow to mature. It's about 15 before it really starts to taste good.
Yeah, I've noticed that as well, and I was always kind of wondering as to why that is, and maybe it's to what you just said. It's very cold there, so that could have something to do with it.
Yeah, their warehouse is not heated at all.
Mm-hmm.
So
which will stint, I guess, the aging process a little bit.
Yeah. Well, the winter time it's doing nothing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you guys got together, you started writing. How long did this book take to write? Like you had to, did you visit every single distillery, or you just researched every single distillery?
We started out visiting distilleries together, and as they start to snowball exponentially, we had to break it up, and Davin headed west. I tackled Ontario. And from there, we would visit as many as we could together. For instance, Alberta was our second province we hit up. But for the most part, we had to just take separate paths. Yeah, there's some of the new places in the book we did through interviews, that kind of thing. but most of them, one of us has been to one of them.
Yeah, we've at least done a really good coverage in every province except for Saskatchewan. But every place else, we've been, like 2 trips to Manitoba, for example. So we went to Gimli together, and then I went to Capital K, and then went to Patent 5. So, but we didn't hit every distillery, but we got to most of them, and we really hit all the highlights. Look at was it Ironwood in Nova Scotia? I think I was there the month they opened, which is about 2008 or 2009 or something like that. So, and then I maintained, connections with Pierre and just kind of built from that. But yeah, we've been most places. Distillery that I haven't visited that I really would like to is the Halifax Distillery. It seems so charming.
So I guess that would lead me to my next question, which is like, and I'll let both of you answer this because you probably have different answers. But what was your favorite experience writing this book in particular? The best thing you discovered, favorite experience like at a distillery. It could be anything.
For me, there were it was going to a place that you thought this is just going to be another distillery, and they end up having something really, really quirky. Like you look at Vienna Estates in the Niagara region, and they make grappa basically, but they can't call it grappa because they're not in Italy, so they call it graspa. And they infuse one of them with maple and chilies, and when you hear about that, you're like, oh, this is going to be strange, like very weird. But then I taste it, and it was one of my favorite things across the whole entire country.
Oh wow!
So it was, for me, it was discovering those little niches that I found most exciting.
Well, my mind is still kind of blown by the incredibly good quality of some of the vodka that we're making here in Canada. It is just wonderfully flavorful stuff. Because, of course, in Canada, we're not, by law, not required to filter out all the flavor. And now that the government has permitted the distillers to use any agricultural product as the base for making vodka, we have like Vodka from Dairy Distillery. And you're drinking vodka, but it's made from 100% milk. Nothing but milk in there. It's just milk, and it's milk permeate. When they make cheese, they get rid of the water. Dairy ferments that, and they make vodka, and they make a few other drinks out of it as well. And they're working on a gin. The Acerum, similar thing, made from maple sap, and you can taste the wood. You can taste all the woody notes that you get in real maple syrup. Or you can taste vodka made out of nothing but blueberries. We have apple vodka. It's really something. I think that Canadian vodka is probably already head and shoulders above any other vodka made in any country. If there's such thing as a vodka connoisseur and they taste Canadian vodka, suddenly it's going to just take off. People are going to say, "Wow!" It's going to be like when whiskey drinkers discover single malt Scotch, because it really is quite good. It's not robust like whiskey, but it's got lots of subtle flavors in there, and it's fun to tease those out and just taste them. And I can taste vodka on ice cream right now just while we're talking. So it's pretty cool stuff. And I guess that my favorite part of the whole process was when I pushed the button to send the 4th draft into the editor, because that was it.
Yeah, I guess it's like submitting that final essay of a university course.
Yeah, you don't even care what mark you get on it. It's gone.
Probably because this is a achievement. This is honestly, very cool book. So anybody watching right now, I highly recommend it. I've had a chance to read your old book, which focused more on, I guess, distilleries as well, but more like whiskeys coming out of those distilleries. Davin.
You know what, Rob? I apologize. I was reading the comments over here, reading Sipper Social Club talking about Tag Vodka. You were okay. You read my other book, and
no, I was saying the focus is different. Maybe you can explain.
Oh yes, absolutely. The other book is just Canadian whiskey, and there's one chapter that deals with the small distillers, the new distilleries that have come on that are making whiskey as well. The definitive guide to Canadian distilleries talks about all the distilleries in Canada. Well, there have been probably 20 more since we finished the book, but we have 253 distilleries in there. We have profiles of 200 of them, and it talks about the gin, the vodka, with brandy, grappa, all these different spirits they're making, Nocino, Amaro, all these different things like that. So this really is more a guide to distilleries, and it's really written for people who want to visit. This is a tour book, a travel book for people who want to get out there and visit a distillery. They want to plot out a little route. We've got maps in there, custom drawn maps, so they can see where all the distilleries are in relation to each other. And if they're at one distillery and they read the description, over to the side it says where they should go next, the closest distillery in each direction. So it's really for traveling. And now that we're stuck in this pandemic, what people can do is they can get a few bottles and they can do a virtual tour. Read about the distillery. I'm not kidding. It's really great because those are, if you read the write-up in the book, it really will give you a really good idea of who's making it, what they're making, how they're making it, and some real color about the distillery. So you can do that. And I was putting one of these together with somebody the other day. We started in the Yukon, we went down to Shelter Point, we went over to Eau Claire, and it's kind of cool. Stopped at Central City and things like this. It's either a tour book, a travel book, or an armchair travel book for now.
Yeah, I honestly read it that way as well. And I found it interesting because I've seen similar things in Scotland and the placement of distilleries throughout Scotland and so on and so forth. But I haven't really seen anything for Canada. And the country is so much bigger, so much harder to navigate, I would say. So that something like this is very beneficial because then people can kind of get a better idea as to like what, even living in Ontario, I didn't know about a ton of the distilleries. So like that's to show you, right? And I'm in the whiskey business by like producing reviews on a regular basis and such. So it was a very educational experience for me. A little bit humbling as well because you should know a little bit more about what's going on in your backyard, I guess. But
it's happening so fast, Rob.
Yeah, and that's the problem. Every time you turn around, there's a new place. So
yeah, and we were speaking about that off camera, I guess, a little bit. It's awesome to see what's happened. That was off camera when we said how it's multiplied by 10, and then Davin corrected me and said probably closer to multiplied by 20 in 10 years.
Don't remember.
Yeah, don't remember.
There may have been a dozen small distilleries, at most a dozen, when I published my first book. There were 253 when we pushed the final send button on this book. And I'd say they're probably 275 by now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it's, it's awesome what's happening. And even the shirt I'm wearing today is the Last Straw Distillery shirt. There you go. You can see it there.
I noticed that. I took my lot 40 off because I didn't want to promote a particular brand, but then I realized I'm drinking Forager. So, this is 40 Creek. It doesn't say 40 Creek, but so yeah, anyway, Last Straw.
How is the Forager? I haven't tasted that yet, actually.
I really love it. It's going to be in the next Whiskey Advocate magazine.
Okay.
It's really great stuff.
Is it available at the LCBO right now, or?
I have no idea.
Yeah, it is actually.
No, yeah.
Awesome. It's kind of cool. Davin and I, we did this a disaster of a seminar about a year ago. We're at in Collingwood talking about cigars and whiskey. And this one guy comes up to us at the end of our presentation. He's like, hey, man, what kind of whiskey would you pair with weed? And I'm like thinking, Prime Minister Trudeau, I would really recommend. And that's the thing. We didn't have anything to recommend. We were kind of blindsided by this guy asking us what to pair with weed. And because of the botanical mix in Forager, when you have like there's juniper, there's spruce tips, it gives a bit of that herbal note to it. So I would say there's your answer. If that guy's tuning in tonight, a year and a half later, you can now pair your weed with Forager, I guess.
Now we were in Collingwood when that happened, so he should be drinking Collingwood or Canadian Best, but
he should be, but he's probably baking out right now somewhere. So
right now, he's eating chips.
Yeah.
Has anybody noticed how hard it is to get chips now that we're in the pandemic? Nobody wants to deliver them. No, okay.
I find there's a shortage of everything.
Yeah, it's
except bananas.
There's steps around every building I think after this weekend, hopefully the craze will die down a little bit. But because it's being Holy Weekend and stuff like that, a lot of people are still probably preparing big meals or restaurants are probably preparing big meals. So it's crowding the grocery stores and whatnot.
Yeah. But we're getting ours delivered.
Oh yeah, that's the best way to do it. That's the best way to do it. Avoid gross. It's scary that in 2020, one of the scariest things you can do is go to the grocery store. It makes no sense, but that's what the reality has become.
Yeah, it's insanity.
Scoring right here. You guys have had a chance to try this. I think Blair, you and I were.
There's some 3D shots for everybody.
We were able to taste this at 3 different ABVs and then shoot. Was it this one or was that the rye?
It was the rye.
That was the rye. Sorry, that was the that was the second time we met in person, I believe, because the first time was when we went to the Canadian Club Distillery to try the 40-year-old.
Yeah, we went to Hiram Walker to try the 40. Was it the 40 or the 41?
You know what? It was the 41, I think.
That's right. Yeah.
41.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was the 41. And we got to try a barrel pull of that. That was awesome.
Well, to me, that's the cool thing about Last Straw is that, like, you could go into Last Straw and buy anything off their shelf and you'll be happy with it.
Mm-hmm.
They just kill everything.
Yeah, and even something as like simple as that mangy squirrel. Like, have you ever tried the mangy squirrel from Last Straw?
I haven't tried that one.
It's a white moonshine, like just a clear moonshine, and it's excellent stuff. It's actually very good.
Well, have you tried the Sight vodka yet that Don made? It's the carrot vodka. The carrot vodka is it's so cool, and I think I have some here somewhere. It looks like this.
Okay, very cool.
And it's earthy and funky and really different. And it's just really cool to see that distillery is making vodka out of carrots. He makes it for another person that supplies the carrots. It's a separate venture. Yeah. But knowing that it comes out of Last Straw, once you taste it, you're like, oh, okay, it makes sense. It's really cool and new. It doesn't surprise you that you hear that Last Straw has their hands in it.
Yeah, they're willing to take a lot of different angles with their. They had that stout whiskey, which was, I thought, very good, and then they also a whole bunch of new gins that I thought were really good as well. Don and Brandon, from what I'm told, is doing all the gins. Like, he's coming up with the concoctions for their gins, and they've been coming out really nice. So I don't know if you got a chance to try those, but they are really nice.
Yeah, I haven't tried those yet. Last time I was there, I tried their beer schnapps, and that was pretty tasty.
That I haven't had a chance to try, but they have all kinds of really cool stuff going on over there. I'm really excited. In less than a year's time, my personal collaboration with Last Straw will be officially a whiskey. So we'll see that.
I heard your whiskey is going to go really well with this book right here.
Look, they should be sold together.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Gift pack.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
I just popped this one open right here. This 13-year-old. Some of the commenters in the chat were laughing because I've had this sitting on my shelf for quite some time. Peter White saying, ask Davin to hound Livermore into putting out Weisers Legacy again.
You like Weisers Legacy? I love Weisers Legacy. I almost was drinking that tonight, but since it's not available anymore, I thought that would be kind of bragging. Because I mean, if people knew that I still have 6 or 7 bottles, they'd be lining up at my door, and different releases too. So,
They know.
Whoever, who's set to do that?
Peter White. Yeah, he's a long time.
Peter White.
Yeah, Peter White.
I'm to hound Livermore and putting out Weisers Legacy again. I'm down to 2 1/3 bottles. Hey, Peter, looks like you and I both have the same taste. God, that stuff's good, isn't it? Isn't it fabulous?
I think, Davin, you and I are hoarding the rest of these stocks. That's probably what's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a time where I when that first came out, the first batch of the Legacy, I must have, because it was such a great price, I must have went through like 3 or 4 bottles just at that time. Didn't buy anything else for a while. It was always that.
Yeah, that was. Remember they had Weiser small batch, and a small batch. Remember it was the first of the Weisers that had that kind of candy taste to it, just like that candy sweetness. I don't know how they made that, but I suspect that Don Livermore was in the background because David Doyle was the master blender, and I think that Don Livermore was telling him, put it in New Oak. I'm sure something like that happened because, and then they went to Legacy, and Legacy was just like, whoa. This was so like luscious and sweet and loaded with rye and all that. That tastes like New Oak again. So someday, I think they've got to do something like that again. But Don was telling somebody that his formula for if you want to make your own Legacy, I think he said, put 2 parts. I could be wrong, but I think he said put 2 parts of Weisers 15 and 1 part of Lot 50, and you essentially get Weisers Legacy. So if you want to make it at home, boys and girls, 2 parts 15, 1 part Lot 40.
I'm going to tune out and go to the basement right now and try that.
Well, Lot 40 cash strength would give it that extra little kick too. So if you did that, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah. You might. It might change the balance. You might want to put a little bit more of the 15-year-old in. I don't really know, but
Maybe a bit.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming all sorts of like book meetings and stuff like that were canceled because of the COVID-19 crisis. What's coming up as far as like, well, what were some of the events I guess you guys were supposed to attend with the book release?
Oh boy, absolutely everything was canceled.
Yeah.
So we were going to meet in Cornwall for 3 days. We had master class and we had book signings and we had a table on the floor at the Cornwall show, the Wonderful World of Whiskey. Fabulous show, by the way, and we're doing it next year. We're just doing a cut and paste from this year to next year. Then we were supposed to head out to Vancouver, and we had 4 days of tastings there. I was flying over to Shelter Point to do a whiskey club tasting and coming back, and we had a dinner. We were leading a spirits tasting on Wednesday. We had a dinner on Friday. I think we're doing distillery tours, time off on Thursday, except lots of media set up in between there. Then Saturday was BC Distilled, and then it was BC Distilled. Then to Ottawa. I was going to Ottawa for about 12 hours, then meeting Blair in Toronto. We had a week planned in Toronto of all kinds of events planned there. And then Montreal, Winnipeg. And then Calgary, a tour of liquor stores in Calgary. And it was going to go on and then end in Ottawa on the 1st of May. Absolutely, every one of those. So we were doing appearances 6.5 days a week for the first 4 weeks. I mean, it's really important because sales at the beginning, when you first release your book, they count 10 times as much as they do later in terms of getting it into the stores and so on. Absolutely. So right now, it's really, we're pretty grateful, Rob, to you for having us on your show, because getting word out about the book is very difficult. So, and the only way people can get it now is online. So they have to go to Amazon or Barnes and Noble or Indigo Chapters. A lot of the small bookstores also are the independents are doing mail order. So it's worth checking with the independents. But I do hope that people will find the book interesting and pick up a copy. But they're not going to thumb through it on the shelf at Chapters in the next 5 or 6 weeks. I don't think so.
I really enjoyed it. And that actually might work in your favor, that they can't go to Chapters and thumb through it and read it bit by bit every time they go into a Chapters, because
no one's going to do that. Once they see it, they're going to want it, and they're going to buy it. Look, color, front to back color, pictures all the way through there.
Yeah, it was well. I was very impressed.
Custom drawn maps. Where are the maps? Blair's responsible for getting these maps drawn. His buddy did them.
Yeah, Anthony in Ottawa.
There's 40 Creek.
Bang up job.
There's us at 40 Creek. Maps of Ontario with blowouts to where all the distilleries are. Hey, there's a good story here on Don Livermore, since we were talking about him, about some of the science work that he has done to. Anyways, all kinds of interesting things. So sure, once they see this, they're going to want to buy it.
Yeah, I think so too.
And then visit every distillery.
Yeah, that's a challenge. 250. Go for it, right?
Oh, you're going to let them off for those last 3, are you? Two of them went out of business. Grand Spirits is gone.
Yeah, and Prairie Sentinel in Alberta, I think, is closed, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Hopefully the hand sanitizer will keep these guys going, so that when all this nonsense is behind us, then we will still have 250.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. I think it's pretty difficult for some people to be making hand sanitizer, and it's I know it's pretty hard to say, but that Grand was it called Grand Distillery or Grand River?
Grand Spirits, I think.
Grand Spirits, yeah. They had a whole bunch of investors. They took investments, and then they went bankrupt, and all the investors lost their money. It's not very funny, actually.
No.
And some woman bought an investment there in honor of her late husband, and she said, all she really wanted to see was his name on the wall in the distillery, and now it's gone. So it's just I know.
Hopefully we don't see too many more stories like that coming out of this, but doesn't look very good.
No, it's not very promising, that's for sure. We should probably change the subject, because
change the subject. That's a good idea.
My plan is to come out of this pandemic looking like Grizzly Adams for the first tasting.
There, I think I'm getting close. This doesn't take long. I'm a chia pet.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, how long since we've seen each other, Blair? Because your chin is rather longer now.
And gray. I think it was full-blown brown last time you saw me. It's that's how long ago it was.
That's the worry of writing a book.
Yeah, we won't get into that, but yeah.
Well, you guys did an excellent job. So this is part 1 of how many future books that you guys will be collaborating on, or what's the next project for you guys?
We do have a next project. We're working together on this series, but I think the next one. Can I talk about this, Blair?
I don't know if we can.
Yeah, let's not talk about it. But yeah, there's another one in the works.
Yeah.
Cool. Very nice. Leave everybody hanging, so they got to get this book, and then they'll be wondering what's happening next.
Yes, that's the key point. Buy the book. and get ready for what's next.
Exactly. You'll have no choice but to anticipate what's next.
Yeah.
So I know this is a bourbon mash, but I'm picking up quite a bit of rye in here. Am I crazy for saying, like, I feel like there's like either like there's a big grassy note that I'm getting out of this whiskey here. This Crown Royal 13.
Yeah, 35% rye, I think, if I remember.
Is it that much? Okay. Wow. So
maybe a little less than that. No, not much less, I don't think.
So what's Crown Royal's reasoning for like giving most of like the high quality stuff to the US and not selling it up here? Do you have a reason behind that, or is it just like marketing? Is it a Diageo thing, or?
I think the state of Texas buys more Crown Royal than the whole country of Canada.
Oh wow.
Crown Royal is just phenomenally successful. It's the number 2 selling whiskey in the United States. Only Jack Daniels sells more whiskey in the States than Crown Royal.
That's unbelievable.
And so, that's where the market is. And so they cater to them. So not very many, but some of their whiskeys don't make it to Canada. We do have Crown Royal limited edition, though, and Canada is the only place where you can buy that, and that's a pretty good whiskey. That's a really good whiskey.
The new 10-year-old? Is that the one?
Well, Crown Royal limited edition doesn't have an age statement on it.
There's a new one that I recently saw. I was surprised to see an age statement on it because I haven't seen an age statement. Oh. Which one's that?
I don't remember.
I think
is it at the liquor store now? LCBO?
I just noticed it last week when I was there, when I probably shouldn't have been there. I couldn't help myself. I had to go.
Are you wearing a mask and gloves, I hope?
I was. Uh-huh. But it's I gotta look it up now because it's driving me crazy.
Well, yeah, okay, yeah, that'd be great. So, anyways, they sell most of their whiskey down there. It's the number 2 selling whiskey of any kind in North America. Crown Royal.
Oh wow!
So they get everything down there. It's the number 1 best-selling Canadian whiskey, and I think it sells more than the next 5 put together. So it's phenomenal.
Because I always said that if Crown Royal decided to put out some barrel proof whiskeys that are age stated here in Canada, they could potentially do what we're seeing to like the bourbon market right now in the US, like these like limited age stated barrel proof bourbons that fly off the shelf, and then like basically everybody goes crazy for them. I really think that Crown Royal has the power to do that to the Canadian whiskey label, like just Canadian whiskey in general, but they haven't here yet, and I'm just waiting for that.
Well, Crown Royal in Texas, you can buy a single cask strength Crown Royal, single cask. They put one out with my name on it, actually.
Oh wow,
it's pretty cool. So it all depends. I mean, if there are people there to buy it, they'll put it out. Don't forget the taxes in Canada are outrageous. That stuff is really expensive up here. Down there, it's a lot less expensive. They're not paying as much, we're not paying as much to the government for the privilege of drinking it.
So, I mean, Weisers is like, they put out their 23-year-old cask strength, and like a few, I think Canadian Club is saying that either one of the next 2 or 3 are going to be the 43, 44, 45. One of those years is going to be a barrel proof as well. So I'm wondering what those are going to come in at price wise, because so far they've been pretty reasonably priced compared to other whiskeys for sure.
Well, the Alberta Premium was a bargain. The cask strength that came out in the fall, and
it was a phenomenal. I've never tasted those notes in a rye whiskey ever in my life. Like the apricot notes that came out of that whiskey were unbelievable. Yeah. I was shocked.
Yeah, Dave Pickerel, who was the master distiller at Maker's Mark, said he tasted it. He thought he had tasted every rye whiskey in the world, and Alberta Distillers was the best by far, and that's why they used that for Whistle Pig. Yeah, and I tend to agree. I mean, it's a distillery that can make rye whiskey, masses of rye whiskey every single day of the week. They can make nothing but rye if they choose to. Now they also make corn, wheat, and barley whiskey there, but nobody else is set up like them to make rye.
And when we visited for the book, they opened up some casks that were just spectacular. There's one gem, a 23-year-old barrel that they opened up, and yeah, we just sat there with our glasses held out while the whiskey was pouring out of it, and it was just nuts how good it was.
So it's a 23-year-old 100% rye?
Yep.
At barrel, like a barrel pour.
Gas strength, yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
There's a guy in the chat, that guy Peter White that commented earlier, he's drooling right now. That screen, like something like that, I think the Canadian market is dying for it, to be honest with you. If you want like my honest to God opinion, like I think that we're dying for it just because something like that would, I think, fly off the shelves. You release a bourbon, it doesn't matter what it is. If it's barrel proof, it flies off the shelf in Ontario right now. I don't know. I think that would, even in the US, would be very, very successful.
Yeah. I'm not sure about the volume, but yeah, there are people who would certainly go crazy for it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, like, so what I've noticed with the YouTube scene is there's a lot of whiskey geeks like that just really love whiskey, and maybe they're not knowledgeable about every type of whiskey, but they have their favorite and they know all there is to know about that one type of whiskey, right? There are a lot of them that are just dying for a Canadian whiskey to like not, and we've seen some really, really impressive Canadian whiskeys in the last few years, especially with the Northern Border collection. And like, for me, Weisers 23 is one of the best whiskeys I've ever had, period. Never, let alone like best Canadian whiskey I've ever had. So I think more of that needs to happen. I think it's coming, but I think Alberta Premium could blow everybody away, and Crown Royal could blow everybody away if they did stuff like that.
Yeah, we have a number of really, really good distilleries. It would be hard to say who's going to blow who away because they all, make really great whiskey.
Yeah. So, okay. I'm not going to ask you to pick your favorite distillery because you don't want to insult anybody, and I understand that. But maybe give these guys an idea of like the most unique distillery experience you experienced while attending some of the distilleries, interviewing for some of the distilleries, researching, whatever. You can both answer that question if you like.
You go first. I got to think about this one. This is one of those questions where 10 minutes from now I'm going to go, oh, I forgot about that place. Oh, I forgot about that place. And I'll get a bunch of spam emails saying that you should have considered those places. But
okay. Other than avoiding getting beaten up by the outlaws in Newfoundland, here's how my tour of British Columbia started. I got up at 4:00 in the morning in Ottawa, which was 1:00 in the morning in British Columbia. And I got ready, and my wife drove me to the airport, and I got in an airplane, and I think I flew to Toronto, and then I flew to Vancouver, and then I flew to Nanaimo, and then I rented a car, and then I drove to Shelter Point. I got to Shelter Point, and Jacob and Leon were outside in their coats. It was chilly, waiting for me, and I got there, and they said, oh, okay, let's get in the ATV. We're going down to the beach. And I'm like, oh, brother, go down to the beach. It's freezing cold. I'm starving. And I've just flown for 14 hours to get here, and I'm worn out, and I'm ready to die. We got down there. There's a helicopter waiting. So we piled in this helicopter, a 4-seater, and we flew to the top of this big mountain. And there's Patrick up there, Patrick Evans, who owns a distillery. He's got a table on it with, salmon and cheese and cold meat laid out and bottles of whiskey. And we're up there, and it's cold because we're really up high. And we're looking down on Mount Washington where the skiers train for the Olympics in the summer. And so there we are doing this whiskey tasting on the top of this mountain, and it was rough. Believe me, it was really rough terrain. And Patrick pointed out a bear footprint on in the sort of the gravel near where the helicopter was. Anyway, that was pretty special. Then we get back to the distillery, and of course I'm the helicopter pilot. I sat in the front, and we were flying along, and we flew over this cliff. So all of a sudden we're flying along. All of a sudden it was like went down like about 3 miles further below me. The pilot looks at me and says, "How do you enjoy that?" And I said, "Not so much." Anyway, we get back and we go down. We circle around, fly all over the farm, and they take me down to the warehouse. And they flick on the lights. James Marin is there. He flicks on the lights, and they've got the warehouse. It's this long, deep warehouse. They've got it set so the lights go on in series, starting in the front and slowly turning on down to the back. So it's just like, this big wave of light moving down the distillery. Awesome. Pretty spectacular. But I remember when Shelter Point was built, they used to have a little water feature inside the distillery. They had a little pond and water running down into the visitor center. All that. I guess they could never keep it working, so they've got a gin still there now. But so that was a pretty special experience. Really,
it's definitely one of those.
The fun of being a whiskey writer. Yeah,
I can imagine.
Yeah,
Shelter Point's been one of those ones that I really want to visit, and I had an opportunity to try a 100% rye. It was a 9-year-old rye, cask strength, and it was a barrel. It was actually Alberta Premium rye, but the Shelter Point sourced it. So I was wondering. We found later that Alberta Premium, they sourced it from Alberta Premium, but from what they're doing there, like even just you could tell by that barrel pick that they're on point with their tasting notes, and they know exactly what they're doing. They're doing a great job. A lot of people, they're building a big fan base very quickly, I think.
Yeah, they really are. I think that they either bought young whiskey or spirit from Alberta Distillers, and they when they bottled it, they took it on their own barrels. I don't know how long they matured it for. Maybe for the whole time, or maybe just for part of the time. But they had a hand in shaping the flavor of that whiskey. Yeah, they had a hand in doing that. It was really wonderful. I remember Leon sent me a note and said, "I've just tasted the best rye whiskey I've ever tasted." This was when the Canadian Whiskey Awards were on. He said, "We want to send you a bottle," and I said, "No, sorry, you've missed the deadline. It's too late." So we sent it this year. And it did really, really well, but it's all sold out now. So anyway, what we do.
Yeah, when I was traveling through Ontario, I hit up about 8 places in one day, and this place here, Willibald's, I found that just the energy of that place, it was just really refreshing to see these guys. They have some whiskey coming out probably later this year, maybe next year. But their aged gin is made for whiskey lovers. Yeah, those guys did it for me. They didn't take me up on a helicopter ride, and I'm going to call them about that because I think it
that should be the new standard, right? Like,
yeah, that should be the new standard. But
treatment.
that place hit a special check mark for me when I was doing my tour.
I've got that same bottle, Blair.
Yeah,
barrel aged gin. It's awesome, isn't it?
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Funny.
So where are they? Sorry, in Ontario?
They're in Ayr, Ontario, which is just a little bit south of Waterloo.
Okay.
It's a nice spot. It's if there's a lot of great Ontario distilleries, but that's one that should be on your list to get down to.
Definitely. Yeah. That's so. Again, without trying to insult anyone, a distillery that has already a whiskey out that most people don't know about that you would like to bring to the attention. So like most of my viewers know about Last Straw, so let's take that one out for now because that was going to be both your answers. We all know that already. So
I'd say Stock and Barrel.
talking barrels really good too.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So maybe what distillery in Canada that you experienced so far that's pumping out a whiskey already? So they're at least 3 years old. That you would be very interested to see what they have in the next few years to come.
Okay. Circa in Montreal,
Yeah.
North of 7 in Ottawa.
Yeah.
North of 7 makes fabulous whiskey. It's really, really good. They make bourbon style, and then they make American rye style, using mash bills. But their stuff, honestly, it's really great. And they only bottle half of their barrels when they reach maturity. So each year it gets another year older and another year older. And honestly, they make some really good whiskey. I don't think most people know about North of 7, but they're really making good stuff.
Yeah, and I think Eau Claire in Alberta, every year they have a release that gets better and better.
But you know what's really cool is Mill Street.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody even knew that Mill Street had a distillery. That was the first distillery in Toronto. Mill Street Brewery. It was and their distillery is right there in the distillery district. Nobody even knew about it. And I remember Blair and I were there with Dave Broom years and years ago. And we were drinking schnapps that they had distilled right on site at the distillery. But I think that because they were the first ones to open a distillery in Toronto, they had to go through a lot of red tape. And by the time they got their distillery license, got everything ready, then they were into beer season, and they didn't start distilling right away. But they eventually, is that what happened, Blair? Something like that, yeah. But anyway, they really make some great stuff. And they've got this woman there now. Maybe she's off on maternity leave now, Martha Lowry. She makes great whiskey, but she makes really interesting gins as well. Really good. And so that's something that, right. And people will go to Spirit of York and not even know that there's another distillery. It's about a 35-second walk away that has been making spirits for, well, probably a decade anyway there.
Yeah. And Martha, when she gets back from her mat leave, I think she has a whiskey ready to go.
Oh, wow.
And that'll be her first. The first whiskey that's released by her that's been distilled, fermented, distilled, aged all by herself.
Yeah.
They did produce one whiskey already, didn't they?
They had two.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, they had a release 3 years ago, 2 years ago. They skipped this year, and this year in November they should have one coming out.
So we got a question here for you guys from the chat. Can you guys read that out?
Laird of Fintry, BC, from Okanagan Spirits in the Okanagan Valley. Yeah, they make good whiskey. That Laird of Fintry is made in honor of somebody who kind of he built a Scottish domain across the lake from where the original distillery was. And so he called himself the Laird of Fintry. They named a whiskey after him. I don't have the whole story there, but Tyler at Okanagan Distillers can certainly tell you if you ever visit them. But yeah, that's good whiskey, and they've been putting it out for quite a few years now. And each year it's a little different, and it's pretty good. That's another interesting place because they ask their distillers to do experimental batches, experimental mashes, and things like this. So there's always some kind of new innovation coming out of Okanagan Spirits. But yeah, Laird Fintry is good.
Yeah, they made a gin for the Martin Picard and Opiate de Cachan in Quebec. That's now made in the Montreal distillery, but that's Tyler's recipe as well. And their gin is on point, and so are their fruit brandies. That's another gold mine in Canada's Okanagan craft spirits. So
you mentioned Spirit of York. I had an opportunity to visit their distillery during Christmas.
Uh-huh.
And I think they've been open for what? To the public for at least 3 years now, right? Is that
3 years? Yeah.
Yeah.
have you noticed any other distillery that's pumped that kind of money? Because like, you walk in there, you can tell that they put a lot of money into that distillery.
Yeah.
So is there any other distillery that's kind of doing the exact same thing that probably has like a good financial backing that you could see being very successful down the road because of financial backing?
I would say the Wayne Gretzky Distillery in Niagara-on-the-Lake has a good supporting backbone. Is there anyone else, Davin, you can think of?
Authentic Seacoast.
Yeah.
In Nova Scotia. Yeah. They make the Glenavon whiskies. And Goodridge and Williams in Richmond, BC. They've been bought by Labatt's now, but they have one of those Italian bottling lines where they're doing 500 bottles a minute or something like that. It's a really, really streamlined operation.
Yeah, and if you look at Black Fox Farms in Saskatchewan, they don't have that same financial support, but they built their own by having this a pick your own flower business. They grew lots of vegetables and fruits and stuff like that. So they built up their own business by doing the same thing. But at the level of Spirit of York, it's pretty. They have a lot of backing.
Yeah, their distillery is absolutely beautiful. I'm very excited to see what comes out of there because I really enjoyed their ride, despite it's only 3 years old, I guess, but it seemed like it was pretty good in my opinion. There's a question here from a very good friend of mine, Jeremy from Sipper Social Club. He has a YouTube channel as well. His channel has 20,000 subs, so definitely a guy that I can put you guys into contact with. Maybe we can get something going on his channel with the book as well. But he's asking about Black Velvet Distillery and Dansfield 21 Year, one of his favorite Canadian whiskeys.
Brilliant.
Jeremy, let's talk, because this is the only way we have to tell people about our book right now.
Well, what's funny is when Davin and I were traveling through Alberta, one of our missions was to hit up every single liquor store looking for dusty bottles of Danfield's 21 because it was just discontinued recently. And I think Davin scored a couple off that trip.
Yeah, I did. I sent one of those actually to my friend in New Orleans because he'd heard so much about Danfield's 21. But it's that distillery is really, it's the second best selling whiskey, Canadian whiskey in North America. It's huge, 2 million cases a year. Black Velvet. People don't even really know about it up in Canada, but it's the second biggest seller in the United States. It's crazy. Now they really make some wonderful whiskeys there. Danfield 21, yes, that was one of them. And I think last time I was out there, they still had a couple of cases of that sitting around, but I think they were taking it out.
And Onyx was a good one.
Yeah, Onyx, fabulous. I think it sells in Sweden. They sell a lot of older whiskey in Europe. They export a lot over there. Yeah, that Black Velvet Onyx, you can't get that in North America, but it's really another quite good whiskey. Black Velvet is highly underrated because people think about the young mixing whiskey. Their 8-year-old though is really quite good. I think you can only buy that in the States, but they pretty much have backed out of the Canadian market just because they ship, I think, 8 tanker trucks a week to California and someplace I think in Kentucky for bottling. They sell that much whiskey every week going out of that place, so it's they're really going great guns, and they can sell it at a good price in the States and make good money. Very often when whiskeys aren't available in Canada, it's because the government just makes it not worth their while to sell them up here.
So I'm just going to plug in here, but I'm going to give you guys a question to talk about while I'm doing that. Biggest struggle writing this book. And also, let's just go with biggest struggle writing this book. Maybe there was multiple, maybe there wasn't that many, maybe it just was all fun.
Yeah, no, I know where you're going with this. It was all fun, first of all. I think the biggest struggle is that a lot of these distilleries, because of the tax structures and the way things work, is that you have a couple people running the place, running the gift shop. They're distilling, they're fermenting. They are working long days, and at the end of the day, they don't have a lot of time to sit around and chat about what they're making. So the biggest struggle was that I think a lot of these distilleries were just so busy and stretched with their resources that it made it difficult sometimes to connect. But we can thank the government and the taxes and what they're being put through for that. They just can't afford to hire a big staff to run the place. So you're looking at one or two people running a whole entire business.
Yeah.
And they have a hard time understanding that talking to someone who's writing a book is much more important than keeping their business going too. So
well, that's a big part. That's a big part. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes it was difficult getting rid of people, getting a hold of people. And Peter White, you're right. The Glenavon whiskey, a lot of that is sourced. They're making their own as well. They have hundreds of barrels maturing, but whether they have any bottles that are entirely their own make yet, I don't know. The biggest challenge, yeah, I noticed that Peter had a comment. The biggest challenge for me, and it was really quite stressful, is that the number of distilleries continued to expand. And 2019 was 2018, it was crazy. And 2019, distilleries opening like crazy, and we could hardly keep up. And I remember when we did our initial plan, there were 130 distilleries in Canada. And we had a deadline, but we got about 6 weeks before the deadline. I had to write to the editor and say, listen, we are not going to make our deadline because there are more distilleries coming. And at the same time, all of a sudden, everybody is interested in micro distillery. So they're getting so many requests for information, so many requests for interviews and for pictures and things like this, that they're just not taking us seriously, because they just think we're just one more, blogger out there trying to, get some information and maybe get some free booze or something like that. So we got to our deadline and we had 3 chapters written. And so what the publisher did is said, okay, you give us what you've got, and then you keep writing, and we'll keep working on those while you're writing the next. So then we went through. So it's not like they didn't change the publication date, didn't change it at all, but they did give us time to get in touch with the new distilleries that were coming up. But we had to work like crazy. I don't know what it was like at your house, Blair, but at my house, it was like, just getting up in the morning and getting started, and then you work until it's time to go to bed, and you do it over and over again. Wednesdays, you take 10 minutes off just so you can put the garbage out, and then it was insane.
Wow. Yeah, no, I remember sending you a draft at 2 a.m. for a distillery, and then at 4 a.m. I'd get a response, and it was just, yeah, we were working around the clock. It was nuts.
Yeah.
But
rewarding as hell.
What was really cool is we had the most wonderful woman editing our book. And she had the most acute, precise observations. Now, she's a woman who, for her hobby, she tours distilleries. She does this, and she's from New York, and she was touring this distilleries down there. And so what happened is we sent in the first draft, which was tolerable, and she quite improved it. And then we got back a second draft, which was even better. But there was still a lot of work to be done, tweaks and changes and things like this. And so then we did a third draft, and she sent back, and she's very nice about it, but letting us know there are things that really didn't make sense or whatever. And so it ended up, we did 4 drafts, went through 4 drafts before we finally had it finished. But when it comes out now, we're looking at this and thinking, what, this is it. It really represents what we wanted it to represent. We're very sorry we spelled Bijou incorrectly. It was a matter of, at the last minute, we decided to put in the accents, and when we put in the accents, the dot over the I didn't look like it was in the right place anymore. So we moved them around, and it looked better, but it's spelled wrong now. And things that we didn't move around, but it looked, and things like that. So we're pretty happy with it. But yeah, it was much, much more work than we had initially planned for. We planned, like when you space out 130 distilleries, that's not a lot of work. You can do that in 5 months. But when you've got, all suddenly 253, and thank goodness Catherine said, time out, this is it. We're going to print.
Yeah. And also she was a master of whipping our cocktails into shape.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Blair did all the tasting notes. I think you did all the cocktails as well. And
well, a lot of the distilleries and the mixologists that work for these distilleries supply cocktails, but it was just rewriting them into a format that would be consistent throughout. And Catherine was instrumental in facilitating that.
Yeah. It's amazing, eh? Blair and I sit here and everything, oh, wonderful, they wrote this book, and they don't realize like there are 10 other people out there who made big contributions.
Oh, yeah.
To getting it right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well, all 250 distilleries in Canada made big contributions to make sure that we could get this done. So.
Oh, boy, you're not kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah, once they realized we were serious, people were very, very good. Really good. And getting photos to us and, taking time out to tour us around, even if they weren't open, and was
for example, Peter at the Newfoundland Distillery, I think I talked to him about 5 or 6 times, just driving him nuts, just to get every single little detail down. But he was such a gentleman and gracious to just talk to me and joke around, and we had a lot of fun.
You know what's really cool, Rob? We had this launch planned in British Columbia, and a lot of the distillers saw the book, and we just got such thanks from most of them saying, you told our story right, this really represents what we're doing, and things like this. And Alex Hamer, who runs BC Distillery, saying, you really captured the distilling scene and explained it well. And I mean, that's very gratifying, of course, because it's really kind of daunting writing about something that people have their life savings invested into, and they have their, so much in, they put so much effort into, and it's really everything to them. And you want to do it right, but as authors, you have to tell the truth and tell it the right way. And it was quite gratifying to realize that we had been able to capture what was there, and that we could tell the real story in a way that where people could say, I can really see myself in that story.
Yeah, what I found very early on when I started a YouTube channel, when I probably truth be told, as much as I was into Canadian whiskey and I knew quite a bit about Canadian whiskey at the time, I didn't know the most about bourbon, and I didn't know a ton about Scotch at the time. And it was really learning as you go and trial by fire. But the whiskey community was very supportive, and they've always been awesome. And I find that kind of what you guys were just saying there is, when people found out you were serious about your project for whiskey, as soon as people understand that this person is trying to promote what we all love, everybody gets on board, and everybody is just very friendly and awesome in this community. I find that's always been the case.
I know someone, Sean McDonald, was asking about Bridgeland Distillery. That was one of the places that would have closed up or just opened up, I should say, when we were submitting our final book. 100%, they're on our radar. I think Davin received some spirits from them, and we plan on featuring them on our website, CanadianDistilleries.com.
Yeah, there's a we've got included them on our list on just CanadianDistilleries.com. We will write them up if we ever get this book properly launched.
Yeah,
but they've got great spirits. Yeah, we're in touch with them. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but had they opened like 2 hours earlier, we probably would have included them in the book.
yeah.
Wow.
No, there's another spot called Silver Fox Farms, I think it is, and I'm looking forward to see what they're doing, because they're making a moonshine using oats, which we've seen at Dixon's, but I've tried the Dixon's oat moonshine and it's fantastic. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of that.
Does Silver Fox also have a YouTube channel? Do you know?
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
I think I've spoken to them. They seem very nice, and they have a nice facility. Actually, their facility looks really nice as well. So.
Well, yeah, that's one of the places that Davin and I are supposed to go to if it wasn't for this lockdown. Was I was hoping when he was in Toronto that we just pop up to Silver Fox and see what they're doing, but that's all on hold. So,
well, we're just over an hour, about an hour and 10. Why don't you guys tell everybody where they can find your book, what's to come? Like, obviously we've talked a little bit about it, but let them know a little bit about what's coming, and also where they can find your book.
Go ahead, Blair.
You can buy it Amazon, Chapters, Barnes and Nobles, any online bookstore, basically. Something to think about actually is that Mother's Day is coming up, and because a lot of these online retailers are prioritizing essential products, so to speak, now's the time to order this book, because 4 weeks from now you'll get it. Unfortunately, the government hasn't declared this book essential services. We'll see what happens, but I would say order it now so that your mother can have a copy.
Maybe, you know what? You should actually put in a petition to have it an essential service, because right now locating distilleries is a great thing, because a lot of them are selling hand sanitizer, right? So
I agree. Yeah.
Well, if you're interested in distilleries, in Canadian distilleries, even thinking about doing an armchair tour or a real tour when the lockdown is over, then it is essential reading. It's called The Definitive Guide to Canadian Distilleries by Blair Phillips and me, and any online seller has it. And a lot of the small bookstores that are doing online sales or doing online sales can also supply it to you. So we just doing our best to get the word out about the Definitive Guide. And if you do like it, post a photo on Instagram and tag me at Davin DEK and Blair at Liquid6, and then we'll just like it and spread the word.
Yeah, and we plan on hitting the ground running as soon as this thing lifts. We're going to get out there and do some tastings and share some of these great spirits we've been trying over the past couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, we have a pretty good community, and I think there's a bunch of people that could really help you guys out to get the word out, because, I mean, you guys also have your venues, but I mean, there's a bunch of venues, which is a good thing nowadays. So, I'll get into contact with some people, but I think we know a lot of the same people in the industry as well. So,
yeah.
Thanks very much, Rob. Thanks.
My pleasure. Honestly, it was my pleasure having you guys on. I think this was very educational, very interesting, and I really enjoyed it. So hopefully you guys felt the same.
Oh, yeah. Thanks so much.
Take care.
Yeah.
Cheers, everybody. So you guys can stay on. I'm just going to end the broadcast real quick.
Okay.